Our top stories at this hour will begin at the UN General Assembly, where President Bola Tinubu has called on world leaders to recommit themselves to multilateralism by deepening relations among member states of the United Nations in line with the principles of inclusivity, equality, and cooperation. But this, he said, is the surest guarantee of global action against existential challenges faced by the international community. Represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima at the high-level annual global event, the president decried what he described as the steep descent into singularity and nationalism, which, according to him, are undermining the quest for peaceful and collective resolution of global challenges such as terrorism, climate change, poverty, food crisis, hyperinflation, nuclear proliferation, and grinding debt burden, among others.
As you assume the leadership of this august assembly, our world is confronted by profound moral questions that will require more than the habitual remarks from this elevated podium to resolve. These are questions about the ultimate purpose of our organization, the United Nations itself, and how it can remain relevant and resilient. It is with this sentiment that I convey to you the warm and fraternal greetings of my countrymen and women. Mr. President, the theme of this year's General Assembly leaves us in no doubt that there is still work to be done to bridge the gap between the aspirations and the realities confronting our world today. It also underscores the need to remind ourselves that the United Nations stands for inclusiveness, anchored on the tripod of peace, sustainable development, and human rights. Today, these pillars of our organization are threatened. They risk being broken by the relentless pursuit of individual national priorities rather than the collective needs of the nations that are assembled here today. While commitment to multilateralism offers us the surest guarantee of global action to address the existential challenges we face, singularity and nationalism are undermining the aspirations towards a peaceful and collective resolution of such challenges.
Well, back home, the Central Bank of Nigeria has further raised its monetary policy rate MPR by 50 basis points to 27.25% from 26.75% to moderate inflation, which stands at 32.15%. But this was revealed by the CBN Governor, Olayemi Cardoso, after the Apex Bank's 297th Monetary Policy Committee meeting held on 23rd and 24th in Abuja to review recent economic and financial development as well as assess its outlook for the year. He argued that the multiple hikes in interest rates in the last 1 year since he assumed office as CBN boss have helped to moderate inflation.
Between 2015 and 2023, the past 8 years, witnessed an incredible amount of pumping of liquidity into the system. In other words, you had a situation where the response to excess money supply, little foreign exchange available, was to fix exchange rates, okay? Which now resulted in multiple exchange rates and arbitrage opportunities between one and the other, okay? And of course, this in itself resulted in a backlog of foreign exchange, because this is where all these things have come from. And sometimes people forget that this is the context in which we came into the saddle of the central bank.
Well, more rate increase, but this time, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, says Nigeria's unemployment rate increased to 5.3% in the first quarter of the year. According to reports, the NBS said the unemployment rate increased compared to the 5% recorded in Q3 of last year. However, no data was provided for the fourth quarter of 2023. To the agency, the unemployment rate is the share of a labor force, which is a combination of unemployed and employed people who are not employed but actively searching and are available for work. It also released Nigeria's employment to population ratio, a key workforce participation measure, saying it declined in the first quarter of the year. President Bola Tinubu has declined assent to a bill seeking to extend the tenure of the service of legislative officers at the National Assembly, those are the staff, as well as the 36 state houses of assembly from 35 to 40 years, and the retirement age from 60 to 65 years. The president's declined assent was conveyed in a letter read on the floor of the Senate by the president of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio. The harmonized retirement age bill was first stepped down in February for further research and consultation with stakeholders after a significant number of senators voted against it.
In respect of the harmonized retirement age for the legislative officers of the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria bill passed by the National Assembly and forwarded to me for assent. Upon thorough examination and careful consideration, I have decided to withhold my assent to the bill. This decision is made in accordance with the powers vested in me by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Well, the chamber suspended plenary to today over the death of one of its own senators. Well, let's go over to the court now, where the detained leader of Indigenous people of Biafra, Mazin Nnamdi Kanu, has asked Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court, Abuja, to recuse herself from his trial. At the resumed hearing, Mr. Kanu spoke from the dock on the 7-count terrorism charge preferred against him by the federal government, while his lawyer, Mr. Aloy Ejimako, was trying to persuade the court to suspend the trial on the basis that his client was denied the opportunity to prepare his defense. Mr. Kanu got up to address the court on why the judge should recuse herself. And more stories now. The federal government has approved the revision of the consolidated public service salary structure for lecturers of tertiary institutions, the police, armed forces, medical and health services, as well as other civil servants, with effect from July the 24th. The chairman of the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission, Mr. Epunta, told journalists at a news conference in Abuja that consequent upon the enactment of the National Minimum Wage Act and the Memorandum of Understanding reached between the federal government and the trade union, the federal government will pay the new minimum wage from July the 29th, while other categories of people to benefit from the new minimum wage and salary structure revision include pensioners and members of the National Youth Service Corps.
Consequent upon the enactment of the National Minimum Wage Amendment Act 2024 and the Memorandum of Understanding reached by the Committee on Consequential Adjustments in Salaries arising from the National Minimum Wage Act between the Federal Government of Nigeria and the trade union sides of the Joint National Public Service Negotiating Council on Friday, 20th September 2024. The President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, has approved the revision of the Consolidated Public Service Salary Structure with effect from the 29th of July 2024. The Commission wishes to clarify that the effective date for the commencement of the National Minimum Wage is the 29th of July 2024. As that was the day Mr. President assented to the Act after the bill was forwarded to him by the National Assembly. At this point, I would like to state that any agency in the Federal Public Service, whether it's self-funded or treasury-funded, that has not received any circular on this matter, specifically from this Commission, should contact the Commission for further directives. This is to avoid any uncoordinated implementation.
Other stories: no fewer than 12 persons have died as a result of the outbreak of cholera, which ravaged 4 local government areas of Adamawa State. Confirming the outbreak at a media briefing in Yola, the Adamawa State capital, Commissioner for Health Felix Tengwami reveals that over 300 persons were hospitalized and 244 discharged so far. The Nigerian Army has debunked claims of act of cyberbullying and sexual harassment leveled against Colonel Ishaku Abdulkarim and other personnel by ex-Private Ruth Ogunleye on the social media. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the Director of Army Public Relations, Major General Onyema Wachuku, denies ex-Private Ruth Ogunleye's claims against Colonel Abdulkarim and other senior officers, whom he says have been exonerated by the report of a panel. Speaking further, General Wachuku explains that the former soldier was discharged June the 14th, 2024, after a medical examination that declared her unfit to continue serving as a soldier. And more business news. The governor of the central bank, Mr. Olaimi Cardoso, has announced plans to inject about 1.4 trillion naira to boost cash flow into the country. Mr. Cardoso says the move will be backed by strict monitoring on all deposit money banks to ensure compliance for ease of withdrawals at ATM points. The Apex Bank governor, who was responding to questions after the MPC meeting in Abuja, explains that total cash in circulation is about 4 trillion naira. And on the foreign scene, the UN chief has warned world leaders that Lebanon was on the brink as clashes between Israel and Hezbollah escalate ahead of U.S. President Joe Biden's final appearance at the global body's signature annual event. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said all leaders should be alarmed by the escalation. The gathering of dozens of world leaders, the high point of a diplomatic calendar, comes as Lebanese authorities say Israeli strikes killed 558 people, 50 of them children. But later on, Israel's defense minister then accused UN Secretary General of failing to prevent Hezbollah attacks on Israel, saying the UN is neither acknowledging the actions for fulfilling its fundamental obligation. In sports news, the 2027 Champions League final will be moved away from the San Siro in Milan. That's due to uncertainties over potential renovations, UEFA said on Tuesday. European football's governing body said that the San Siro had lost the showpiece fixture as the city of Milan could not guarantee the ground and the surrounding area would not be affected by refurbishment works. AC Milan and Inter Milan, who both play their home matches at the San Siro this month, rejected a project to modernize and restructure the iconic stadium, which is owned by the city of Milan. Well, those are the major top stories at this hour.